Hello guys, my name is Chris Priestman from hookedgamers.com. Today I'll be doing a video review for you on Faery Legends of Avalon. Now before you run off at the mere mention of the word fairy, let me bring you back and let me tell you that Faery Legends of Avalon is actually quite a beautiful looking game. It's an RPG title developed by Spider Studios, and I'll be looking at the version you can download on Xbox Live. My first apprehensions of the game was when I heard it was an RPG and is a downloadable arcade title. The two don't really mix, mainly because RPGs are huge content. You've got really well developed stories, you've got huge luscious worlds to explore, you've got characters and characters after characters, and I wasn't sure if you could get that all on Xbox Live. And it seems my instincts were actually correct, as Faery is quite restrictive. There's a lack of certain aspects you would expect in an RPG, and it's very, very basic for an RPG title. Upon starting Faery Legends of Avalon, you'll have the usual RPG mechanic to create your own fairy character. You can mould your own face and whatever, but you can't do anything below the neck. Once you have completed this stage, you'll then be woken from stasis and then flew up to see the Fairy King Oberon. He will then tell you that humans have lost faith in magic recently, and since then the Fairy Kingdom has been forced to retreat from the human world. The problem is now though, it seems that the humans have started to abuse the Fairy Kingdom, and there's a significant loss of power in 3 separate worlds. It is then your mission to travel to these worlds through mirror portals and to find the source of the problem and rectify it to restore glory to the kingdom. Now where the game really stands out is where it uses its creative imagination to create these different worlds with hugely diverse characters. You have mermaids, ghouls, ghosts, fairies, goblins, etc. And these are spread out across 4 completely unique worlds. You wake up in Avalon, which is a kind of seaside, very rocky, mountainous sort of area. The next one, which I'm not going to try and pronounce, but here it is if you want to see it, is a world that consists of a huge tree and all of its many inhabitants. You also have the Flying Dutchman, the Ship of the Dead, and probably my favourite, the last world, is the City of Mirages, which is a city built on the back of a huge scarab which is walking through a desert. The real problem with the game is when it starts restricting your imagination. At all times during the game, you are constantly reminded that this is a video game by a huge invisible wall all around the world. It is something you can't really ignore. The truth is, these worlds are actually extremely small. There's no seamless blending between the worlds. You have to travel through these portals to get to them, and it's just a real sense of confinement when you're in them. Now, being an RPG title, you're constantly put on quests which are given to you by outside characters. As has many RPGs before it, Faery Legends of Avalon doesn't actually send you on quests, it sends you on errands. The quests often don't give you a sense of progression or achievement. You're just collecting bits and bobs of people, sorting out people's love affairs, and what really makes it worse is there's no real FMV sequences. There's nothing there to show you what you've done. Nothing changes in the game. It's all heavily scripted and stays very linear and to the point. The game does try and vary the quests up a little bit sometimes by giving you a choice of whether you want to battle an enemy or whether you want to do it in a more humane way to clear a problem. But ultimately, having this choice doesn't actually add anything to the game. The only thing you will find is that some of your companions which you bring along with you will either like you or dislike you more or less, depending on your choice. Ultimately though, it doesn't matter if they like you or dislike you, it doesn't change the game in any way. You are just told how they feel about you, and there's no real sense of immersion in the game because of this. Making immersing yourself into the game's narrative even harder is the fact that there's no voiceovers in the game. You have to read everything. Now this is not a problem, I enjoy reading, but many modern gamers have got used to the comfort of having a voiceover in the game rather than having to read things. So lacking this support for gamers is probably going to put more people off than it's going to draw them in. And the fact that some of the words are actually spelt wrong or there's some grammatical errors really does not help the situation. One area the game does pick up a little bit in is the combat. Now if you're not a fan of RPGs that use turn-based combat, you're probably really not going to like this game. I myself am not a huge fan, but I will happily play them. I was quite relieved when I started playing that I realised it wasn't using the Final Fantasy mechanic where you come across random battles all over the place, as you see in Pokemon as well. I always found it really annoying when you're trying to get from A to B, but instead you're having to have about 12,000 battles on the way. Instead, when you're travelling around in the world in Faery, you will be able to see enemies and you can avoid them if you want. Obviously at some times you'll have to fight enemies, but the fighting is actually quite good. I can imagine this to be good for people who haven't really played RPG titles before, because it's very simple and kept very basic in the battling. The only problem is, it's very, very easy. I found myself not really having to use health. I never died once in my first playthrough at all. But what I really do like about it is the amount of moves you can do. You learn more and more as you level up as usual. And you can also have up to 2 companions with you to help you fight, and they also bring their own moveset. Another thing brought into the game to mix the battling up a little bit is the items of clothing you collect and wear will also add to your moves. My character, for instance, has a scorpion tail which gives him a poison attack, and you can choose from different wings and antennae and things like this. Just add a little bit of diversity into your character and make it your own, as well as adding different moves to your combat. But overall, having all this choice just makes battling very, very easy. And having magical healing abilities as well as health potions just means you'll never ever die, unless you purposely decide you want to die. The pros of the game then are that it has quite an impressive character customization for such a small game. It has hugely rich and imaginative worlds. Having the range of companions you can have along with you and picking up all the clothes and weapons you can use really add depth to the combat. And overall the game avoids all the complexities of other RPG titles. It's very simple and basic, so if you are a new player to RPGs, this is probably a good title to start off with. On the negative side is a bit of a bigger list. There is no voice acting, it's very linear, very repetitive. You probably won't want to play the game again once you've completed it once because nothing changes in your second playthrough. It's all drawn out and scripted for you the first time you do it, so coming back over it, it's not really going to offer you anything else. It lacks guidance at times. I wouldn't want to go over the amount of times I got lost in the Flying Dutchman where it's so dark you can't see, and the tree world is just ridiculously hard to navigate through. And there's also that pointless moral choice system which doesn't add anything to the game. It's just there for a simple gimmick because it seems RPG titles need this kind of thing and they've just chucked it in because that's the given thing to do. Despite all my negative criticism of the game, there is something that comes through that grabs me. It's like a childlike charm to the game. I think what I want to call it is a kind of character to the game. It's very imaginative and the worlds are really well thought out. The characters are diverse and I really like them. The only problem is, as a game, Faery Legends of Avalon does not suffice. To be honest, the game reminds me of a early PS2, possibly even PS1 game, because of the constant barriers up against you. You're just constantly reminded this is a game, you cannot get sunk in. And this is really the problem of it being an RPG title on Xbox Live Arcade. I do admire the developer's intention to make a downloadable RPG title, but basically I'm going to have to tell them that they've kind of failed. Fortunately for them, there's not really much on Xbox Live to compare it to, and you will get quite a few hours, at least 10 hours of gameplay out of the game, and for an Xbox Live Arcade game that's quite good, but as I said, you won't be playing it again for a second time. I mean, if you are a hardcore RPG fan, I would not recommend you getting this game. You would be better off looking somewhere else. But if you're new to the genre, this might be a good start, but just do not judge the whole RPG genre just on this single title, because there are much, much better examples out there. And I will leave it on that note. Thank you very much guys for watching this video. If you want to read my full review and see the scores for the game, please go to hookedgamers.com, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel for more video reviews and trailers from the latest games. Please check out our website at hookedgamers.com.